hello and welcome to episode number 306 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. Carlos here, and in today's show we learn that a technical failure triggered more than 100 cancellations at Heathrow. Everyone's favourite low-cost airline is in trouble with the EU for having an unfair advantage in Spain, and a New York flight makes an emergency landing at London Heathrow, resulting in a passenger being detained. In the military news this week, a new unmanned aircraft capable of staying airborne for up to 1 year makes its maiden flight. Also, if you live in Hawaii, your life just got a little better, because if you have the chance to fly in a P-51 Mustang. And in everyone's favourite series, Captain John Hutchinson talks to Nick about Concorde's radiation levels and dispels a few of those infamous rumours about queue jumping. So without further ado, welcome Matt, joining me in the studio this week as always, pushing all the correct buttons in the touchscreen world. It's of course Matt Smith.
Well, hello everyone. How are we all? It's been a funny old week for you, hasn't it, mate? Really?
Yes,
we'll be honest, but we won't talk about that.
We won't talk about that, but
okay,
yes,
no, that's fair enough. Yeah, it's been a quiet week for me.
So joining us back this week, it is the absolute legend that is Neville Bounds. He's busy.
Oh, he's busy. Sorry, we're disturbing him at a crucial moment. Yeah, the show could fall off.
Can you bring up that fader,
yeah.
Nev? And he's on mute.
Okay.
Here I am.
There he is.
There he is, yes. Wrong button.
From my travels around, well, the United States and Europe, actually. Trying to dodge those thunderstorms and gales and gusty winds. Few flight delays here and there, but generally speaking, all right. And great to be back on the show and see my chums, Carlos and Matt, as well.
Nev, the question on everyone's lips across the globe is, have you reached that gold status yet with BA?
No. But I will be very soon. I'm off to Bilbao in Spain with Mrs. Nev in a few weeks' time. And that will just tip me over the edge. I don't mean by
no way to talk about your wife.
On holiday with Mrs. Nev. I mean the old gold status. So I'll try that out, see what the first class lounge is like.
Yes, absolutely. What a treat.
I like the sound of that.
That should be good.
Yeah.
But it just shows you that even with BA's reasonably generous schemes, how much flying you've got to do to get some of these status things. And you also have to, my company only pays for economy tickets up until 8 hours flying time, or premium economy after that. So if you want anything more than that, you're paying for it yourself, which is absolutely fine. But it takes a lot out of the bank accounts and out of the status thing.
Nev, isn't there a time limit on your BA thing with the points that you acquire? Have you got
I think there's an expiry thing, but of course with the status thing, the silver and gold status, of course, just because you get gold status 1 year, you have like a points reset, and in my case it's on April the 8th, I think it is, and it all goes back to zero and you've got to start again. So it's a lot, and I don't know whether I'll make that next year, but I'm going to give it a good go, that's for sure.
Right, okay. Well, it's nice to have a goal. Yeah,
I think you will. I think Nev will be like platinum status soon.
Right, okay, platinum.
I'll try.
Now, listen, we have slightly bad news, because we were all very excited. Very excited because we thought that we were going to have a full complement of hosts this evening. We thought we were going to have Armando with us, and then at the very last minute, his company stuck in a shift in his roster, and so he's currently flying from, I think, is it Pittsburgh to Charlotte, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, so yes, Armando sadly is currently in the air, but fret not, he has very kindly recorded his segment, so we will hear from him tonight, reading out his story. So that is something, at least.
But to drown Matt's sorrows, I had to get him something to cheer him up. So I've got him some meringue nests.
Hey, I'm doing quite well. We're halfway through.
He's eaten a few off, so he's quite happy with that.
Absolutely, yes. I'm currently on a sugar high. Good luck, everyone.
So welcome everyone who has joined us this evening on the 21st of February. There's loads of people in the YouTube chat room. We've got Tanya W's joined us in there. David Kerr, hello to you, David. Chris Griggs, Richard Adams, Myla's in the chat room as well. Scrolling down the list here. Masha, hello to you, Masha. Richard Adams. Tony S, hello to you, Tony. Thank you, Tony, for your very kind donation through PayPal as well, Tony. That was very kind of you. And Jenny as well. Sent through a donation. Thanks for that. Pilot Pip is in the chat room as well
is he all right? He must be very bored if he's here.
I know. And our favourite local guy, Paul Tricker, is also in the chat room.
Our one listener in Beccles.
Beccles, yeah. And Jacob Darlington Brown. Hello to you.
Now, he's Australia, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Actually, Jacob's asked, what's that weird thing behind you, Carlos? Well, this is, you may have seen this in the summertime. That's our PT UK studio fan. Yeah. Because it is quite warm in here.
It is, yeah. And I have got the window. The radiator is on as well, I'm afraid.
Right. That'll be why.
I know, but I can't really... if I turn it off, it stays off forever. On our heating system. It's a long story.
Long story. So we've got loads of stuff to get through this week in the show, as you said, or as I said at the start of the show. So without further ado then...
Yes. Are you ready, Nev?
We're going to start the show, as we do each week then, with our rundown of the news from around the world and the UK.
You're right there.
I know. Okay. It's the Mountain Dew.
Easy. Right.
So if
I'll press this button, shall I?
Anyway.
Let's get us out of a hole.
Let's go. So, kicking off this week's first news story on the independent.co.uk. And it's been a good week for passengers travelling through Heathrow Airport. The headline on here...
I mean, that's one school of thought.
Travel chaos at London Heathrow Airport after a technical failure triggers more than 100 cancellations. Isn't that a normal thing on a day?
Oh,
So tens of thousands of passengers at Heathrow Airport have had their flights cancelled or heavily delayed due to an IT failure involving check-in systems. Obviously, Matt wasn't around at the time to sort them out. At least 10,000 more have had their flights to or from the busiest airport in Europe cancelled on Monday this week. The failure began early on Sunday afternoon. Heathrow announced at 10:26 that the problem in the evening... problem had been fixed. It said that all affected 4 passenger terminals, both landside, before security check and airside. Departure gate information is being handwritten on whiteboards. More than 100 flights to and from the airport were cancelled during Sunday, the vast majority of them on British Airways. Nev is here, so he did get home. The biggest airline at the airport. BA had intended to cancel around 20 flights, but because Nev put his foot down, because the severe weather, because we had storms at Storm Dennis.
Storm Dennis, yes, yeah.
Many of these are as a result of what Heathrow calls technical issues, which are currently being resolved. And one traveller, Tim Barton, boarded his flight at 4:05 in the afternoon, departure to Düsseldorf from Terminal 5, 2 hours behind schedule, he told The Independent.
Oh, that's outrageous.
Chaos is an understatement, he said.
Whatever.
And apparently he was running up and down the terminal at one point. He's obviously feeling a bit...
we just went for a jog, I think. Yeah.
And as were hundreds of people, he said. First I was told my flight was at gate 18 at the far end of Terminal 5. I think only Nev would know where that is, because he's a Terminal 5 person. Then I was told it was at gate 6, a completely opposite end, and eventually at gate A11 in the middle. Blimey, just as well it's not on the A12.
Cambridgeshire?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Probably on the A14.
Let me say, those numbers that he mentions,
yes,
they're not exactly, marathon distances away from each other. It's a brisk walk with a coffee maybe, but no more than that. I mean, talk about first world problems.
I know.
Seriously.
I know. I mean, the only reason that I'm interested in this story, to be honest with you, is I've been literally. Nev, you may be able to come up with a few. We were sort of spitballing before the show, weren't we? But I'm intrigued to know what sort of technical fault would have the ability to affect all of the terminals and their data streams. So I mean, it sort of rather suggests that the data source was the issue rather than the, because presumably each terminal is individually plumbed / wired, I guess. But I just can't get my head round what...
There's a funny part of this story, actually. It says at the bottom here that apparently that a BBC News channel were interviewing a passenger on a Berlin-bound flight. And apparently during the interview, obviously in the terminal building, a male voice can be heard off camera telling her, "You're in a secure, controlled area. You cannot do this."
Oh, really? Oh, dear. Filming where they weren't allowed. We wouldn't do anything like that, would we?
So Nev,
and probably in vertical video as well.
There is that. No, come on, it's the BBC, dear boy. Come on, there are standards.
Yeah.
Yes, that's quite absolutely.
So Nev, what happened here? Was it a Windows update, or
Nev, right.
were they running a iOS? Platform?
Well, I think I don't know the answer, obviously, but these FIDs, as they're called, flight information displays, that's what you see on all the screens around all the terminals. There's presumably a central point of information for all that goes all over the airport. Now, it might be that a server fell over, or they had a fiber connection problem somewhere. Whatever it was, I've no idea. But these things do happen from time to time. And yeah, it causes some disruption because no one knows what gate they're supposed to go to. And that presumably, if it messes up on the sort of airside end of things, the crews don't get information about what gate they're supposed to go to either. So yeah, there's lots of things that can go wrong there. But as always, hopefully people learn from IT outages of this nature, and they put some more resilience in place for the next time.
The absolute git in me would love to be in here where this whiteboard is in the terminal with a black whiteboard marker.
Oh no!
Just to add a few numbers and stuff onto that board.
Right, okay.
Would that be...
No. I mean, that's not the nicest thing you've ever said out loud.
It would be funny, though. Would that not be funny?
Jacob Darlington Brown is unable to... He's concerned he's not going to be able to sleep until you answer the question as to what that thing is, that grey thing that's rotating behind you.
What, the fan?
Yeah.
Yeah, the P2K fan.
Yeah. It seems to be causing an alarming amount of distress.
It's so nice.
To many, many people. Actually, all jokes aside, there are some interesting comments here in the chat room. They were saying that...
Spit it out, Matt. Come on.
God, I was reading the wrong bit. Sorry, my brain went into meltdown mode. It's like Tony was saying, can you claim compensation when it's the fault of the airport if you miss your flight?
I think you're covered after so many hours. I forget how many hours it is now. Is it 2.5? Or is it 3 hours?
There's various things that happen, aren't there? So, you either get food vouchers, or if it goes on longer, then you get put on a following flight if they can do it. If it goes on longer than that, then you're in a hotel usually, or told to come back the next day. But I'm sure none of this is the airline's fault, of course. It's the fault of the operator or the infrastructure.
Absolutely.
You get one of those £4 food vouchers for a packet of sandwiches that cost £6.
Yeah, you can't get much for £4 at Heathrow. That's for sure.
No, I can imagine. Yes.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next story, and this one for Matt is regarding obviously Ryanair, and they've been doing some naughty things in Spain.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. That's perhaps a bit strong. So this is on the Olive Press. And the headline is EU widens investigation into Ryanair for potential unfair advantage in Spain marketing deals. So Ryanair has seen the probe into whether it received an unfair advantage from the Spanish government widened. EU competition regulators first launched an investigation back in 2013 into marketing schemes offered to airlines flying to and from. Now, somebody tell me, is it Girona, Costa Brava, and Reus airports in Catalonia? Catalonia? Sorry. They were concerned that carriers like Ryanair may have an unfair advantage after receiving marketing deals from airport managers. But now the investigation has been widened to include marketing incentives from public bodies. Through these additional marketing agreements, as well as through the other marketing agreements already under investigation, Ryanair and other airlines received payments in the form of marketing incentives since 2004, the Commissioner said. The body said it was concerned that the schemes may have constituted as state aid. Oh dear, that's not good. If the probe reveals Ryanair broke state aid rules, it will have to pay back the amount it received.
Now, I think you'd be a bit silly to think that obviously Ryanair operating into about 1 million different airports within Europe, that with all these different airports and stuff dotted around Europe they fly into, they obviously have some kind of handshake agreement with these airports to say that if you fly in here X amount of times a year, we'll give you, a hot panini for free or something.
Right.
Or, but they have these...
Well, they are delicious.
Yeah. But the airports do offer very good. I think they offer very good deals to Ryanair in regards to passenger throughput and stuff, because it's not just the airline itself that benefits. It's obviously the airport restaurants, the duty-free shop, all the different bits.
I don't know. Is it so much of an issue if that's being offered to multiple airliners? I mean, or airlines. Sorry. I mean, is it?
I mean, if it's only been offered to Ryanair, then that is a bit naughty.
That's fair enough. But if it's being offered to all carriers out of that particular airport to encourage said airlines to market flying into and out of those airports, I mean, surely that's just like the tourist board going a bit nuts with their checkbook. I mean, is it really? I don't know. How do we feel about this, Nev? What do you think?
Well, of course, we're not privy to all these negotiations that go on behind the scenes, are we? So, a bit like...
How very sensible of you.
It's a bit like, perhaps, Ferrari and the Formula One world. They get a bit of a discount because they've been in it from the start. So I don't know what goes on here, but it's clearly... there's individual contracts in place and what have you. So I'd rather not comment because I don't actually know.
Oh well, I mean,
which is unusual for me.
I can say, why should that stop you? I mean, yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see on this story. But I mean, I don't feel that it's that big a deal personally. But there we are. It is what it is. Obviously, sticking with branded airlines and their themes. Nev, your love of BA
this story. I love this.
Yeah, is very much
because this is not allowed on aircraft. Hasn't been allowed for years.
No, indeed.
And this phone has just flunked the whole idea.
Right. Okay.
Carry on, Nev.
Yes. More details to follow.
Firstly, there are so many ads on this page. I'm just afraid of clicking anywhere and going off to some weird place.
Are you suggesting that the Daily Mail are not making any revenue out of their actual newspaper
honestly,
anymore?
There are 5 adverts on this page and some pop-up thing going on as well. So we'll see how we do. Anyway, it's on everybody's aviation favourite site, the dailymail.co.uk. It says that British Airways flight was forced to make an emergency landing after a passenger's mobile phone overheated and started smoking. Holidaymakers in the business class section alerted cabin crew when they saw smoke coming from under one of the reclining seats. The BA 2167 flight from Gatwick to Tampa in Florida was diverted to Bermuda, and the Boeing 777 was met by fire crews on the runway. Note, that's a Boeing 777, and so they've shown us a picture of an A319. That's fantastic. Thank you, Daily Mail. All the passengers were ordered off the plane, leaving their luggage behind, and fire crews boarded the plane to remove the phone. Later, when the plane took off, a member of the crew jokingly announced, "The phone will never work again." A source on board Saturday's flight told Mail Online we were about 2 hours from landing. A passenger sat in business class didn't know their phone had slipped down the side of his seat, and they pressed a button to automatically recline the seat. Their phone was crushed in the mechanism and began smoking. It was obviously quite terrifying because we didn't know if the phone was going to explode. But the captain was very calm, very assured, and said that we were only 60 miles from Bermuda, so we diverted there. It was all sorted out pretty quickly, and we arrived in Tampa only 3 hours later than expected. Lithium-ion batteries that are used in almost all mobile phones and laptops have the potential to overheat and catch fire. The airline confirmed the captain followed airline protocol for such incidents and landed the plane as quickly as possible. The BA insider said that part of the reclining seat had to be removed so that the overheated phone could be made safe. A former BA captain told the Mail Online, "Any fire on board during flight is the most dangerous event that can happen. The priority is to get the plane on the ground as soon as possible," and this is what the captain did. A spokesman confirmed the incident, but added, "Safety is at the heart of everything that we do, and we are very sorry for the delay to our customers' travel plans. We did everything we could to minimize the delay after our flight diverted to Bermuda as a precaution after a mobile phone got stuck in a seat and overheated. Our customers were looked after and offered refreshments. The phone incident is the latest mid-air scare involving a British Airways flight. The Mail Online told last month how a captain had to don an oxygen mask moments from landing when his co-pilot was overcome by fumes in the cockpit. The captain radioed the control tower when his co-pilot was unable to continue the flight from Athens to request an immediate landing at Heathrow. BA said the incident was due to a fume event, with aviation insiders saying toxic fumes from the engine had seeped into the cockpit, which can't it? So, yeah, I think these. It's almost happened to me, actually. It's very easy to drop your mobile phone into all sorts of crevices and hinges in the passenger seat, isn't it? And once it's there, it's almost impossible to remove it. So there's actually a part of the safety announcement now on BA flights, at least, is that if you do lose your mobile phone, please don't attempt to move it. Wait for one of the crew to come and help.
To come and retrieve it, yeah. I mean, it's... Yeah, I mean, in many ways, obviously, this is a complete non-story, as always, isn't it, when it comes to stuff like this? I mean,
well, they've certainly made a meal of it with the amount of advertising they've got on this.
Yeah, quite absolutely. They've gone for full, and it is that clickbait thing, isn't it? That's the things that's the thing that really frustrates me with a lot of these stories. But perhaps we'll do a thing about that at some point. But
yes.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next story now. This one is being shared with us by Armando. But first of all, we have an excuse as to why he's not with us this week.
Hey guys, apologies for not being on the show live today. I was really looking forward to it. I was supposed to sit reserve today, but overnight they put me on a trip. So I will be flying exactly at the time that we're recording the show. But this first story, either way, is from 1 Mile at a Time. And it's regarding a video that's gone viral in the last week or so with an Etihad A380 landing at London's Heathrow airport during the last storm, Dennis, which had some pretty significant crosswinds. So there have been a lot of crosswind landing videos that have emerged as a result of these strong winds in the UK, but this particular one seemed to go viral. Interestingly enough, the video doesn't show too much of a struggle for the pilots to get to the touchdown point, but what makes the video so shocking to people is the angle at which the airplane touches down and then the extent to which it has to make adjustments after landing. Hopefully Matt gets a chance to play out the video, but almost across the board you'll see praise for these pilots for their landing. The company itself, Etihad, seems to disagree. So from the contents of what is apparently a leaked memo sent out by Etihad's pilot training department to its pilots following the video going viral, the memo was sent out by the manager of pilot training for the Boeing fleet, which is a little odd considering it was an Airbus. But the memo references, quote, a video this week of one of our A380s landing in a strong crosswind in London, end quote, and it kind of states the following in regards to it, quote, the official view from the training department is a simple one. This is not what we want to see. There is a time to give an approach away in the interest of safety. If you see such a thing in this simulator, that would be a grade 1 for both pilots. Please, gentlemen, let's teach our pilots to operate safely, even if that means changing the mission, end quote. So obviously it's a little weird that the training department would officially refer to all pilots as gentlemen. But moving along, Etihad doesn't seem to be alone in criticizing this landing. Pilots on several internet forums, popular internet forums, are also kind of criticizing but hey, you never know what you're getting in those groups.
Has to be said that there's obviously been lots of videos and stuff on YouTube of crosswind landings at various airports.
Absolutely.
I'm just watching one now actually on YouTube, and I mean it was, when you look at the actual video itself, the one that Matt put out during that piece that Armando read, it does look really bad, but then you have to remember the camera's offset to the runway so that it's not looking directly down the runway.
Yeah. And Nev, you said sort of something quite interesting actually in when you've been watching that feed, because you said there were some other shots that you saw looking from the back of the plane when it came down.
Yeah, the A380's got a tail-mounted camera right at the top of where the top of the rudder is, I think. And if you look at, again, it's on YouTube somewhere, but if you look at the angle from that point of view, it doesn't look anything very severe at all. Now, obviously, the idea with crosswind landings is, for the most part, is that you have to decrab the aircraft before it lands so that you don't put a lot of unnecessary strain on the main landing gear. But at the end of the day, if you're a pilot or a co-pilot for an A380, you will have had many, many years of experience. So I think the crew knew what they were doing. And as I say, under the circumstances, with the weather as it was, if they'd gone around a couple of times, I mentioned this on one of the forums, that they could end up at Frankfurt or somewhere else. Now, at the end of the day, it's all about safety. But we weren't in the cockpit, and we're not qualified, and they are. So, I didn't think it was, out of the ordinary, but then I'm not qualified to.
No, this is true. Yeah. It's.
There are some. If you go onto YouTube and you search, obviously the Storm Dennis, the wind sort of stuff. If you look on there are some pretty hairy videos of various aircraft landing at Heathrow, Manchester, all across the UK, and there's some that actually look worse than that Etihad one. Let's be honest. These guys go through some incredible training. I know offhand for a couple of people I know who work within Etihad that their pilots are really, really well trained. As all pilots are, but they have got very high standards with their pilot training at Etihad. But Matt, you've obviously been doing a little bit of searching online.
Yeah, have I got the right one there? Yeah. Okay. So it is. I say this is the thing. I mean, and I was watching that video thinking that is absolutely horrendous. I couldn't think of anything worse. I'm just trying to get to the bit where they've done it. But actually, as it comes into land, I need to move in a bit further, or is that about right?
That's about right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I'll pop it up then, just so that you
for those
can
of you watching in YouTube World, this is the video that Nev was on about.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, when you see what obviously we played a moment ago, it doesn't look anywhere near as horrendous as it's coming down. I guess it is at a slightly jaunty angle, shall we say?
Crabbing effect,
crabbing effect.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But actually, when you look at that, it's nowhere near as horrendous. Because I was thinking, from a passenger point of view, that must have felt horrendous inside there. But actually, it doesn't look anywhere near that bad when you look at it from the perspective of the aircraft. There is an issue of perspective here, I think, isn't there?
Actually, I think my main issue with the whole thing is
vertical video.
Vertical video,
yes, my apologies. Yeah. I'm sorry, Ned, but it's the best I could do in such short.
Can I point out as well that whoever is SDTV who filmed the original picture on? Can I just point out that video was filmed in 360p.
Oh, was it? Oh dear.
I mean, I think a Nokia 3210 records in higher than that.
Well, that sounds like long play VHS to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed. Yeah. Although a refreshing change from Big Jet TV, it's nice that somebody else got a bit of
yes, very much so.
Got a bit of airtime, shall we say? Yeah. So well done, everyone there. So it's you next, I think.
Carlos. I know. MyLondon.news for the next story. Yeah. And headline, Heathrow diversion. New York flight makes emergency landing and passenger detained. What is it with all these emergency things going on this week?
I know.
So a plane travelling from Rome to New York declared a general emergency and diverted to land at Heathrow Airport. Alitalia Airlines flight AZ698 was diverted to the West London airport after declaring an emergency over France. The flight, which left Rome at 10:37 a.m. on Sunday, was due to land in New York at 2:25 p.m. But at around 11:30 a.m. the flight declared a general emergency and began to descend over the English Channel. Met police officers got onto the aircraft as it landed and detained one of the passengers. A spokesperson said police were called to Terminal 4 at Heathrow Airport and a report of an unruly passenger on a flight from Rome to the US. The man was taken off the plane when it landed and detained under Section 136 of the Mental Health Act. And, it's safe to say that something obviously upset the crew on here. He was obviously doing something naughty.
Yes,
to get them to land.
Again,
at
it's a bit vague. The only reason for sort of throwing this story in this week really is because obviously last week we were talking about somebody who'd actually been detained as a result of their actions on a Jet 2 flight, and it was just sort of like, oh, hello, what's kicking off here? I mean, it's airlines don't divert.
He must have been kicking off fairly heavily to be for that to divert and go and land fairly soon, actually, when you think about it. It's only just took off from Rome and landing at Heathrow, so it would have been still quite heavy, although it would have been possibly A320, A330.
So again, this is my naivety here. Nev, you might be able to answer this one for me. Is it Do they still have to dump fuel? If bearing in mind they hadn't been in the air long.
Not all aircraft can dump fuel.
Yeah, I mean, is that...
No, that's right. Not all aircraft are equipped with that jettison facility.
Okay.
And also, the other thing is that a lot of aircraft are certified to land
with that weight.
Their maximum takeoff weight as well. So that it will require an inspection and all the rest of it, and the plane probably won't be able to operate again that day until that's been done. But it's a question of how bad the emergency is. But at the end of the day, that they've got to take it seriously. So they want to get it on the deck as soon as they can. But diversions are expensive. That's for sure.
So I mean, he, as Carlos was saying, he must have been properly kicking off for them to even vaguely consider land. And let's be honest, Heathrow is probably one of the more expensive ones to end up having to land at. You're not going to make that decision lightly, are you?
No. It's just one thing you shouldn't do on these days, in these particular current situations within the world, is to do anything silly on an aircraft.
No, absolutely. But there are. But
none of our listeners would do that.
No,
because our listeners are all fantastic.
Of course they are. Absolutely. We're going to go for a slightly unusual
this story, Matt. I love this.
I know.
Because I played on one of these for the first time last week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So this is not a usual source for our news stories. This is on the Nintendo website, Nintendo.com. And the headline is, "What's new? Nintendo Switch Lounges offers travelers gateways to adventure at US airports." So busy travelers embarking on journeys this year will have the opportunity to encounter fun surprises waiting for them at the airport. Well, let's hope they're all good surprises. Beginning on the 13th of February at select major airports across the US, Nintendo will be providing Nintendo Switch on the go pop-up airport lounges featuring Nintendo products and opportunities for hands-on time with the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch Lite, with comfortable seating, charging ports, and Nintendo Switch game demos playable in both handheld mode and TV mode. These lounges demonstrate the convenience and joy that Nintendo Switch family of systems can add to everyone's on-the-go adventures. Some of the games will be featured at the demo areas include popular titles such as The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart. You've got to have Mario Kart in there, really, haven't you? It's the law. Super Mario Odyssey, Super Mario Party, and Tetris. I remember Tetris. I remember playing Tetris on my Game Boy. In fact, actually, no, I tell a lie. It wasn't my Game Boy. I wasn't allowed one. My sister had a Game Boy, and I used to steal it from her and play Tetris on that. But I mean, this is quite a cool thing, isn't it? I mean, it's
especially for if you've got young kids with you, as families do travel with younger children and stuff. And obviously, I know because certain members of our family, their youngsters, sort of 4 or 5 year olds and 6-year-olds, have got these for Christmas or birthdays, the Nintendo Switch. And when you're at an airport, it is the case that you normally, if you're me, you get there 6 years before you need to. But it's always good to have something to do when you're at an airport. And if you've got the ability to kind of sling the children into an area where they can play on toys and like this Nintendo Switch, it's a fantastic idea.
I know, winning. I mean, I love the layout. I assume this is just a knock-up, is it? I don't suppose it's actually in. I guess this is not actually it, but it looks like a lot of fun, doesn't it?
But it's amazing as well how it's a bit off topic, but how popular the old games are becoming again.
Yeah, very much so. I actually downloaded Tetris for my phone. I still play it now.
Oh, you wait till you get round mine then.
Oh right, okay, lovely.
Because you have got the whole 400 retro games in your room to play.
Right, no
including Super Mario Land.
Yeah. Well, any chance you could go a bit sooner?
I'll bring it round. You can play.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Nev, you're obviously not much of a gamer, are you, Nev? You're not much of a sort of a
well, back in the day I was. But when Nintendo first came out and that sort of stuff, I think everybody bought one, didn't they? Or at least a second-hand one. But the trouble is, it was so addictive, and you'd end up going to sleep, and the whole thing was just sort of burnt in across your eyes, wasn't it? And because you've been playing it so much. But I like some of those retro games, I must say.
Do you think this is something you'd appreciate, Nev, given the chance to have one of these in the lounge while you're waiting for your flight to wherever?
Not for me, but I can see friends of mine that would definitely appeal to. Yeah.
Well, and yes, no doubt about it. Quite.
So moving on to the next story, Nev. This one is for you, and another one of those pesky slides.
Oh, yes. It's on the aviation24.be website. And it says that on 15th of February, Virgin Atlantic Boeing 747-400 Golf Victor Alpha Sierra Tango was about to be catered for flight VS75 from Manchester to Orlando, as one of the aircraft doors wasn't properly disarmed, or possibly a malfunction of the door slide system. The emergency slide was activated. The aircraft finally departed to Orlando with a delay of 6 hours and 16 minutes. And we've got a little picture of it there as well. And of course, obviously these are basically manual or automatic, aren't they? So when the before the aircraft pushes back, you hear the crew say doors to automatic, so that they will deploy if there's an emergency and the doors are opened on the runway, or in the manual mode when they, just as they turn into the gate, usually they're set to manual. So something wasn't quite right here, that's for sure. And one of our airline chums said that airlines make a very big deal out of this internally. At the airlines that I've worked for, they take huge amounts of measures to try and make sure this doesn't happen due to human error. Fatigue can play a huge part in this, and especially when you think your day is done after you land and taxi, that's the time that these mistakes can happen. Of course, technical errors do happen sometimes, and some aircraft have the ability to display information that a slide is armed or not armed from the crew, and maybe on the flight deck as well. Screens inside the aircraft, but this isn't a whole lot of help for the ground crew. Also, this person is not entirely sure whether the 747 has this capability, but the 380 doors disarm automatically when it senses the door is being opened from the outside. That's interesting, isn't it? But, for example, the 737 does not have this capability, which is why you see the red flag across the window of the doors during flight. It signals to anyone outside that the door is armed and should not be opened.
So I mean, I guess we've got to play the waiting game on this one, haven't we? Really, to discover whether it was a malfunction or whether it was because somebody opened the door, perhaps without.
It'll be on the AAIB website in a few months' time, I would imagine, when they've done an investigation.
I'd love that video with this story.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt just sat there watching it. The video on the story, Matt played it out for those of you watching on YouTube, saw it. And I love the way the guy just sort of casually gets out of the cab of the Gate Gourmet truck, looks up and sort of, oh dear, slides
sort of rolls his eyes almost.
Yeah. Oh, slides come out. Oh. Then he reverses off and the slide kind of explodes over the top of the truck.
Absolutely. Bit of a mess.
Bit of a mess, yeah. Obviously, these slides are, as Nev say, these slides these are not cheap, are they, Nev? And obviously, they have to be reinstalled. No,
also, the speed of inflation is fantastic. You've probably seen some of the videos of crews training with them as well in the hangars. And these things do inflate really quickly, and there's an awful lot of PSI or bar of air pressure going into these things to inflate them. So, they can do a bit of damage if you're on the wrong side of that, that's for sure.
Well, and I suppose presumably, because, I mean, it looks like something went pop on that slide there, because it did deflate when we were watching
he burst
that video.
Something when he reversed.
I mean, would you necessarily have a screen just kicking, a slide just kicking around to...
I mean, they probably do have replacement slides, but I think it's not just a case of bunging one in.
Oh, Richard Adams saying, didn't somebody say that it was something like 20k per repack?
Ouch.
That's an expensive hobby.
Ouch.
Yep. Good heavens. Yeah, it's not good, is it? Oops is the word.
So, moving on to the next story, and Armando's got this one, and this is about some loss as parks, some 747 freighters.
Next story is regarding Atlas Air, and Atlas Air has had a pretty rough year between the crash in Houston. From cargofacts.com, Atlas Air Worldwide Holdings today reported a net loss of $410.2 million for the fourth quarter of 2019. That's partly resulting from a non-cash special charge of $485 million related to the write-down of the company's whole 747-400 freighter fleet due to lower cargo yields and aircraft utilization. So Atlas posted the loss despite block hours in the fourth quarter of 2019 increasing by 1.3%. The company said charter and ACMI revenue during the quarter was lower because of decreased 747-400 flying due to tariffs and trade tensions, but this was offset by growth in 737, 747, and 777 CMI cargo flying and an increase in volumes in the company's charter segment. So for 2019, overall block hours for Atlas grew 8.4% compared to 2018. Operating revenue increased by 2.2%, but the Atlas ended the year with a net loss of $293.1 million. So during a recent conference call, the president and the CEO, John Dietrich, said the company had parked 4 freighter 747-400s in the last couple months because of the soft demand. The aircraft had previously been flying in charter service. Based on flight tracking, Dietrich was referring to 2 747-400 serial numbers 24833, 26557, parked at Marana, Arizona since January 2nd, and in Alger and since February 2nd. There's a couple other ones that the article goes into. These aircraft could obviously be reactivated with the appropriate lead times and brought back into service, according to the CEO, Dietrich. He says he doesn't anticipate parking any production 747 freighters, but one of them is expected to be returned to its lessor during the first half of 2020. Atlas also began flying one aircraft on a ACMI basis for Israel-based El Al on January 1st and extended the leases for 2 777s for 10 more years. So according to the CEO, Atlas is also selling 3 non-essential aircraft in its portfolio. One 757-200 has already been sold. 777 and a passenger 737-400 are expected to be sold this year. The company confirmed to this website, Cargo Facts, that the 777 being offered for sale is Unit 35606, which was previously dry leased to Emirates and then returned to Titan Aviation Holdings, which is Atlas's leasing arm. So Dietrich expects Atlas's performance in 2020 to be an improvement over 2019, subject to developments related to the coronavirus, believe it or not. To that end, Atlas has been handling special charter demand arising from the cancellation of passenger flights and ensuing lack of belly capacity on a number of world trade lanes, most notably to and from China, of course. So and Atlas is anticipating a peak when production picks up and when belly capacity resumes due to a, quote, significant pent-up demand which favors freighters, end quote, he said.
Yeah, it's
a busy world out there with it when it comes to cargo. You know, you've got so many different players in the cargo world. You know, you've got your DHLs. Obviously, you've got Amazon Dual Air, their own kind of. But I think who do Amazon use, Nev? Can you remember who Amazon use for their cargo carrier? I think it's one of the big players, isn't it?
It is, and I can't remember.
I can't remember who it is. The chat room will know.
But it's an internet question, everybody. It's an internet question.
But it's a busy world within the freight industry. It's probably a cutthroat world, I expect, because they're all trying to
no different to the aviation industry either, is it? I mean,
but they have got quite a large fleet. Atlas have got a huge fleet of different types of aircraft, I will say. But just looking back at their net income actually in 2017 was quite bad. Looking at their
the chat room, both Owen and Tony said that Amazon use Atlas.
There we go.
What this particular Atlas?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Atlas, yeah.
That's not good.
No, but I don't know. It's when you look at their fleet, their aircraft that Atlas use. They do use all Boeing products actually. When you look through the fleet,
right.
They've got 122 aircraft in service, according to this actually. But they do lease quite a few. So,
but then a lot of airlines do that as well. There's not that many airlines that actually own their aircraft outright, is it?
My airline.
Oh, and Masha was saying the Atlas one that crashed was the Atlas one that crashed was flying for Amazon.
Ah, okay. That was the 767, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the one that crashed. Yeah. It's a shame, but when you hear things like this, because obviously we don't want to lose any carriers, be they commercial
aviation
or
in general,
freight carriers, because that means jobs. We don't like people losing jobs.
We
do
don't.
We?
Anyway, this is a very exciting story for you coming up next. Absolutely,
it was actually.
Mainly because you had something arrive in the post. But
I did.
Become apparent in just a moment.
So this story is on Nev's favourite font. Carrying
lovely.
website, that's flightglobal.com, and the headline on here, which is it's a kind of sad but happy for me headline.
It's a happy sad story. And the
headline: fuselage of the first airline A380 recycled into identity tags. So a German company is using recycled fuselage parts from the first airline operated A380 to create collectible identity tags, following the parting out of the aircraft by Tarmac Aerosave. The ex-Singapore Airlines A380 MSN 003 9 Victor Sierra Kilo Alpha is one of 2 aircraft that the airline has retired that are being broken up for spares by recycling specialist Tarmac Aerosave in Tarbes, France. German's Aviation Tag has launched a series of 7,000 identity tags manufactured from the outer skin of MSN 003. Each of the limited edition sports type aircraft registration number, edition number and size, says Aerotag. The A380 MSN 003 first flew from Toulouse on the 7th of May 2006 and the aircraft was delivered to Singapore International Airlines on the 12th of October 2007. It operated the world's first A380 passenger service on the 25th of October, flight SQ380 from Changi to Sydney. Singapore retired the aircraft in October 2017 and it was parted out by Tarmac Aerosave last year. So when I returned home from work this evening, on my doorstep was...
brace yourself, massive geek session.
I know, a delivery from said company, Aerotag.
So what number have you got?
So I've got number 1070 out of 7,000 here. And it's actually... If you look, I think you can probably see, for those of you in the world of YouTube land, how thick that outer skin is there of the 380. And on the back, you can't see because it's green, so it blends in with the green screen. But no, it's really well done. It comes with a little thing to put around your suitcase, which I won't use because this is going on my wall at home. But
does that, you see, I don't know. Part of me wants stuff like that to be used.
I know. I would love to.
Not stuck on a wall or put in a museum.
I mean, anyone who wants to grab one of these limited edition from MSN 003, unfortunately, they did sell out rather fast. I was lucky to get one, but they are recycling MSN 005 very soon, and they are taking pre-orders. For the tags from that. So if you take yourselves over to aviationtag.com, and they also do other commercial airline tags on there as well from loads of other airliners, including 757s. There's Vickers VC10s from the Royal Air Force, and I think they're just they're rather nice, I think. But it is sad though to think that this aircraft first flew in 2007 and is barely done anything really, is it?
It is a shame, isn't it? It is a shame.
What do you think, Nev? Ready for a BA tag?
Yeah, it is. It is sad, isn't it, that an aircraft that's not been manufactured for very long has now been parted out. But as we've said so many times before, although the A380 will be flying, I would imagine for at least another 25 years probably, that there aren't any more going to be manufactured. and it was just the wrong aircraft at the wrong time. But of course, aviation has this habit of going full circle, doesn't it? So who knows, in, I don't know, 5 years time, suddenly the airport capacity demand, or the airline's demand, might well be again for another high density, high passenger number aircraft such as this, but we'll have to see.
Do you think Hi-Fly will snap some of these second-hand ones up, Nev?
Might do, mightn't they? Because obviously they're used as wet leasing for when aircraft are stuck, or they've got mechanical difficulties or whatever. So their 380 has been put into a lot of service recently. So you never know. Yeah, as some of the aircraft, as some of the airlines choose not to use it, Hi-Fly might want to use it for charter operations or for rescue missions, something like that.
I wonder whether Emirates will snap up some of these second-hand 380s.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to watch this space. I mean, I suppose the trouble is, it is the older ones that are being retired.
Yes,
isn't it? So it's they'll already be significant air miles, if you like, on that airframe.
Only one I know from new, though.
Right, okay. Yeah. Oh, well, that's all right.
Full service history.
Right, of course, yes. Nothing goes without saying.
I'd hate to think how much a tax is for a year.
Right, yeah, okay. We're going to move on to the next story. News in English is a Norway website, actually, and the reason for choosing this story is quite sad, this really. Commuter airline cuts 4,000 flights. So Norway's domestic carrier, Widerøe, best known for serving the country's small airports with short runways, announced major cuts in passenger and cargo service on Monday. It acknowledged that crucial public transport in outlying areas would be grounded because of its high costs. We're unfortunately forced to cut completely necessary public transport in district Norway. Widerøe's chief executive, Stein Nielsen, stated in a press release on Monday morning. He claimed that various passenger taxes and fees combined with the high cost of short routes and small aircraft left the airline struggling with profitability. The negative development has continued and grown worse over the years, stated Nielsen, adding that Norway's weak kroner is the ageing aircraft and fees amounting to around 400 million NOK over the past 3 years have contributed to Widerøe's woes. We're in a desperate situation, Nielsen later told state broadcaster NRK. We know that the result of these cuts will result in services to remote areas and nowhere near what passengers need. But we have no choice. Subsidised service exempt, he warned of cuts from early May that will reduce the airline's flights by 15%, resulting in 4,000 fewer departures a year. The Evans Airport, located between the northern cities of Harstad and Narvik, will be hit hard with routes cut to both Bodo and the Andes. So will many Widerøe routes to and from Bodo and Tromsø. Is it Tromsø? Tromsø, between Bergen and Florø, and between Oslo and Hovden in the mountains of southern Norway. Several direct routes between small airports and Oslo will be cut as well, including some routes between the Norwegian capital and Florø, Namsos, and loads of other names that I'm just going to give up trying to pronounce now because it's getting embarrassing. The cuts won't affect routes that the state pays Widerøe to operate to ensure transport to remote communities. Widerøe also received fee relief valued at 40 million NOK from the Transport Ministry and government. I mean, it's always very sad when airlines are having to cut flights. I think that just thinking about this for a minute, Norway is actually quite a large country. It is.
Not everybody remembers that. So it's roughly the size of the United Kingdom, but with a population of about 5.3 million people. So that's about 2/3 of the size of the London population in a country the size of the United Kingdom. And of course they need these regional routes.
Absolutely, yeah.
The weather is horrific in the winter. Driving is not an option.
Yeah.
And of course, I had a friend of mine who used to drive from one end of the country to the other, and it used to take her the best part of 2.5 days. I mean, it's an enormous landmass, but of course it's very sparsely populated, and I think I'm a bit concerned about this because this is a real that will give people, economic hardship, I think, not being able to get around, or at least getting back to some of the larger towns and cities in the country.
Yeah, and this is so, as you say, it's such a crucial resource for them, really. I mean, I don't know, are they having to cancel it because they just aren't getting the numbers?
Maybe, yeah, it's possible, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, if the planes were full every time they left, then perhaps they wouldn't be having to make these tough decisions. So, but it does beg the question how they are, how are they getting from one point to another?
It's worth noting, actually, they were the launch customer for the Embraer 190 E2.
Were they? Oh, that's interesting.
That occurred on the 24th of April 2018. So, but they've got, I would say, predominantly all de Havilland Canada Dash 8 aircraft.
Oh, hello. Chris Griggs has ordered himself a tag, by the way.
Oh, has he? Which one's he gone for?
I'm not sure which one. I think I'm going to assume the 757.
Oh yes, I'm tempted to buy that one myself.
Yes, I think that's what in response of. Yeah, I won't be buying one because it's got 757 written in it.
There are other ones to buy, honestly. What you like?
Yawn. #yawn.
Oh, so Nev, moving on to the next story, and it's worth a few quid. This one.
It is, yeah, and it's on Flight Global, and
that's good.
That is good for the reading eye. It says that Air France's withdrawal of the Airbus A380 fleet has resulted in its parent taking a €126 million impairment on the aircraft type. The flag carrier disclosed last year that it would retire its A380 by 2022, just 13 years after introducing the double-decker type. Air France originally ordered 12 A380s, but only took delivery of 10, having swapped the remaining pair for A350s in 2016. 9 of its 10 A380s remain operational, according to Cirium Fleet's data. The Air France KLM group states in its newest released full-year financial results that the progressive early phase-out of the A380s is likely to cost €370 million. This figure, it says, is mainly due to accelerated depreciation of the aircraft, which would normally have assumed a 20-year operational life. The company has taken a €126 million charge, for the 2019 financial year. Impact of the change in depreciation slopes will be spread over the period through to 2022, consistent with the retirement timetable for the aircraft, it states. The difference between the initial and accelerated depreciation amounts to €52 million, the company says. Depreciation slopes have been revised so that the net book value as of the date of the aircraft's phase-out converges with the estimated resaleable value, it says. Air France KLM says that the remaining €74 million of the €126 million charge relates to other asset aspects of the A380 option, particularly cabin retrofit programs, penalties on contracts and spares. When we're talking about these sort of things, you always forget about all the infrastructure, don't you? All the other things that go with making these aircraft operational. It's not just the aircraft itself; it's all the other stuff that goes with it.
This is the thing, isn't it? I mean, I guess I suppose you don't sort of really think about what they plan to do with it afterwards. If you like, essentially, a lot of this is the cost, if you like, is involved is literally because nobody will want to buy it afterwards.
Exactly.
I mean, that's more or less the long and the short of it, isn't it? It's like where you would normally resell it onto either a cargo carrier or someone like that, and because people just aren't interested because the A380 everybody seems to have fallen out of love with.
Yeah, I mean, the thing of it, you think most airlines buy these aircraft, and you look at airlines in the US like Delta and Americans and stuff, especially Delta, and they're using aircraft, getting their absolute money's worth out of aircraft before they eventually retire them.
Yeah.
And then you've got the A380 here that's barely, 12.
I know.
11,
when you think how old like the 75 is,
some of those are 20 plus years old that are flying now and still being used for commercial airline service. But that's like Nev said, these came a bit too late to
the party
table, and as we all know, not every airport in the world is geared up to receive A380s.
Well, I mean, even places like Heathrow that can essentially accept almost any aircraft, there are only it's a handful of stands that they can use with the A380, isn't it? If I recall correctly.
Yes, and also I think I remember Adam saying that they're restricted on what taxiways they can use as well. So they can't just go where they want to.
Because it's such a beast, essentially.
Yeah.
This is the thing.
Yeah, I think Boeing they kind of done well at the 747. I think as the bigger aircraft kind of thing goes. So well done. So moving on to the next story, where Armando is going to take this one.
He is.
This commercial story. The hits just keep coming for the 737 MAX and Boeing. So the headline is, Boeing admits debris found inside fuel tanks of 737 MAX planes is unacceptable. Aircraft maker Boeing has said that it's found debris contaminating the fuel tanks of several 737 MAX airplanes that were built in the past year. The debris was discovered in an undisclosed number of airplanes and has been described as absolutely unacceptable by Boeing's head of the 737 program. So foreign object debris is a term used to describe rags, tools, metal shavings, any other foreign material that's not supposed to be there, left behind by workers or during the manufacturing process. And it has been a problem for other Boeing models in the past. Boeing 737 MAX planes have been grounded since March of last year, as we all know. The company continued to manufacture the planes at a rate of 42 per month in a hope that they would be certified to fly again this summer. So the company has actually built around 400 undelivered MAX jets before production was halted last month. So a statement from the FAA said it was prioritizing safety and is, quote, following a thorough, deliberate process to verify that all proposed modifications to the Boeing 737 MAX meet the highest certification standards, end quote. So the planes, which were discovered to have debris inside, had not yet been delivered to the airlines. Boeing says it has immediately made corrections to its production system after the debris was found during maintenance on the parked airplanes. More inspections will now be performed before fuel tanks are sealed. Mark Jenks said in a memo to employees who work on the 737, during these challenging times, our customers and the flying public are counting on us to do our best work each and every day. He said the debris was absolutely unacceptable and one escape is too many. A Boeing spokesperson says the company still believes the FAA will certify the plane to fly again in summer of 2020. The company is conducting a voluntary inspection of its undelivered MAX airplanes, and the FAA, of course, said it has increased its surveillance based on initial inspection reports and will take further action based on the findings. So Boeing is conducting test flights to assess updates on a flight control system, that the MCAS that was blamed for the two crashes. So although the investigators looking into the accidents have not pointed to production problems at the assembly plant, the company has faced many concerns about debris left in other finished airplanes, including the Dreamliner, which is built in South Carolina. And I will add in there the KC-46, the Boeing tanker, was also delayed because they had FOD in the aircraft, and the Air Force did not accept them. There's obviously a risk of many risks, but electrical short-circuiting fires, tools, metal shavings, or other objects are left inside the airplanes. It could clog filters. It's just generally a bad thing. Now, Boeing is getting the brunt of this, but surely this is something that would happen in not many, but it could happen to any manufacturer. It's just Boeing right now is being extremely careful, and this just isn't really helping them, is it?
I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, surely this issue is prevalent to every single aircraft manufacturer out there. I mean, you know, as Armando said there, I mean, they are getting the brunt of this. But, you know, I mean, I reckon if you looked closely at every single, you know, you could look at any Airbus product, for example, and I dare say you'll stumble across something that was left there, like a screwdriver or you know, a wrench or anything. You know, I mean, I'm sure foreign objects is very, very commonplace in a lot of other manufacturers. I mean, Nev, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, isn't it, that the 737 and especially the 737 MAX is just in the spotlight at the moment, and anything that ends up in the press.
So here's a slightly crazy train of thought here. Do you think possibly that the only reason this story even made the headlines? Sorry, I should just say this was sent in by one of our listeners, James Taylor, in the week here. Do you think some of this is clickbait, where they're desperately trying to get advertising revenue by you clicking on a link, and people are, essentially this story is relevant to every single aircraft, but because the MAX is in the news so heavily and everybody seems to have a fascination, if you like, with the goings on of the MAX, do you think that's perhaps why it even became a headline?
It might be, mightn't it? I mean, you never know. You never know what goes on in the background, but it's an easy win, isn't it? Let's face it. Any 737 MAX story at the moment, I know I'd probably click on it.
And I did, yeah.
So it's one of those things that this is going to take a long time for it to go away, and they're still talking about, bringing it back into service probably at the end of the summer season now, rather than at the beginning. When it's all over and done with, and the aircraft is back in the air again and properly certificated by the FAA and EASA as well, then I think everybody would be in a much better place. But at the moment, there's you always see, if it's a bit of a slow news day, someone seems to drag out a 737 MAX story, don't they?
Do you think that, I mean, maybe it's because of the heightened media coverage, if you like, surrounding the MAX? I mean, what was the one that you guys were saying, the aircraft where it had a similar sort of start in life, where it didn't go at all smoothly?
The DC-10 had
the DC-10. I mean, do you think perhaps if the media was as it is now back then, whether I mean, I suspect the MAX will be one of it will forever be popping up in headlines, because
and also things like the original Airbus A320 had many software and firmware revisions in the early days. There was a crash at Absheim as well, which was well publicised. But of course, this is before the days of social media, with everyone chipping in. So I would say Carlos is probably right, actually, that if it was the DC-10 era today, with all this social media, it would be just the same. It almost wouldn't matter what aircraft it was, actually.
Indeed.
That back in the day, that was, it was a well publicised crash. That was in France, I think, wasn't there? It was France.
I remember, it was a cargo door, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of the cargo doors which hadn't been latched properly, and quite rightly, if it had have happened now with the way things are in the world, it would have just.
Well, this is it.
This
is the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is where we bring the commercial news segment to an end. So we're going to hand things over for Nev to introduce the next very special part of the show.
Yes, thank you very much, Carlos. Well, this is one of my favourite episodes of the Captain John Hutchinson series, I have to say. So in this week's extended episode, John talks to Nick about Concorde's radiation levels and dispels a few of those infamous rumours about the BA Concorde queue jumping whilst taxiing for takeoff at Heathrow. John also talks very candidly and quite emotionally about the French Concorde accident and the causes surrounding it.
Although your flights were delightfully short, albeit perhaps as a result your remuneration wasn't quite as high as it could have been, were there any efforts to monitor your radiation levels when you were flying Concorde?
Yes, they were very concerned about that, the regulators, yeah. And that's what led to the fitting of a radiation meter.
Oh, you had one on board?
We had one on board. And it was colour-coded, green zone, amber zone, and a red zone. And if it ever went into the red zone, there was a drill for it, and that was basically to descend below 48,000 feet into thicker air.
Wow.
Which would have incurred a massive fuel penalty doing that, by the way. And as far as I'm aware, I'm absolutely certain it never happened on a British Airways flight, and I'm pretty sure it never happened on an Air France flight that they ever had a radiation alert. Having said that, I was coming into Heathrow one day, and we were at 6,000 feet just south of Aldermaston, and suddenly there's this bong and a red light and the radiation alert. I think it was a leaky day at Aldermaston.
I love it.
I don't think people living near Aldermaston would have loved it.
No. But it's interesting, considering all the Met forecasts and things that we consider. Did you actually get forecasts of solar flares and that sort of things that might have raised the level of radiation?
No, we didn't.
Okay,
no.
I was just curious. Brilliant. Now, personal question from me here, really. Taxiing out in Concorde, you always seem to have priority over other traffic that was on the ground to save fuel. How did you feel about continually queue jumping?
I think that's a bit of a distortion, Nick.
Are you sure?
At Heathrow, they're wonderful air traffic controllers at Heathrow, but they're British, you know, and you don't go queue jumping. And we used to just wait in the queue for
really?
The taxiway. Yeah, so yeah. Honestly, cross my heart.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. How about New York?
I'll tell you a different story about New York.
Yes, well, I can't say I spent a while in the queue at New York, that's for sure.
The New York controllers had no such compunctions. I was in a holding pattern at 25,000 feet or something in this Concorde, and you can't be in a holding pattern in the Concorde. I mean, you're burning as much fuel per hour in a holding pattern as you were when you were flying at Mach 2.
Oh, good Lord.
And getting absolutely nowhere.
Mm.
And so you can do maybe one turn, and then you say, we're diverting. And I just said to the co-pilot, please request a diversion to Windsor Locks, which is about 60 miles northeast of Kennedy Airport. And he put in this request, and Kennedy Airport came back quick as a flash. They said, okay, turn right, do this. Gave us several different frequency changes. We ended up on a discrete frequency, just us and New York. And they said, you're cleared now to turn left, establish on ILS 22 left approach Kennedy Airport.
Oh, I love it.
We never requested that. Wouldn't have dreamt of requesting it. They had queue jumped us. They queue jumped us.
Well, now I know about it, I'm going to resent it anyway. Now, I know in the Air Force, occasionally dropped a supersonic boom over land. Did you ever do it in Concorde?
Yes, we did. We had a route to Bahrain, and that route was subsonic from Heathrow across Europe to Venice. We'd get out into the Adriatic and then accelerate up to Mach 2, down the Adriatic, heading in a sort of southeasterly direction, then turning left and going south of, where would we be going south of? Greece and Cyprus and all this lot, and heading east now and going straight over the Lebanon and Syria and Iraq, supersonic, all the way to Bahrain.
Was that because you didn't expect anyone in Lebanon to complain?
I don't know how that was negotiated. Nothing to do with me, Garth.
I love it.
I guess in a way, they had so many bombs and things going off in Lebanon, because this was all, you know, these are areas at war, and the odd sonic boom, what the hell was that, you know? Mm.
Now, on climbing into Concorde, this is off another interview, you once said of it, none of this poncy glass cockpit. Do you have strong feelings about modern cockpit design?
No. Not really. I just love saying it because I like dials and needles and things like that, because that's what I've been used to all my life.
No, I was just going to make the point that at the time it was probably one of the most advanced cockpits that were flying around.
Yep.
Excellent. Now, here's one that might create a little bit of discussion. After the Air France Concorde crash, the operating captain seemed to have made a number of critical errors, such as taking too much fuel, additional bags that led him to be departing overweight, then accepted a tailwind. What was it about the culture on that flight deck that prevented his crew from intervening? Was it something to do with the prestigious position he was in as being the captain of an aircraft like Concorde?
Oh dear. I think, for a start, the Air France Concorde fleet had a slightly gung-ho culture anyway, and that is actually recorded in the French accident report into that crash. There is somewhere in that accident report, I've got a copy of it upstairs, an English version of it, and it does criticise this rather press-on attitude of the Air France Concorde fleet. So I think there was a sort of endemic culture that existed within Air France about the operation of the aeroplane. As far as that particular flight was concerned, I know that captain was considered as an absolutely ace pilot. He'd windsurfed across the Atlantic. He was a fantastic skier. He was very charismatic. And my own reading of it is that the first officer and the flight engineer on that flight had almost got the attitude, well, if Christian Marty thinks it's okay to go, then, you know, who am I to question him? I don't think he was overbearing. I mean, I've looked through the cockpit voice recorder traces, and there's nothing overbearing about it. There's, there's nobody. The fact of the matter is, nobody questions anything. It's just, if the captain's happy with it, I'm happy with it. We won't question it. I'm in a bit of trouble with talking about this, by the way, because Pilot magazine, the current issue, has just published an article by a chap called Pat Malone. I don't know who Pat Malone is, and he is very critical of me. And he ends this article by saying that the Air France flight crew were blameless, and I have no business to be criticising them. I don't enjoy criticising them at all.
And surely you're doing your interpretation of what the extra report says.
It gives me no pleasure at all, absolutely none. But how on earth Mr. Malone thinks that those flight crew members were blameless is beyond me. The airplane was over the maximum structural takeoff weight. Over the maximum structural takeoff weight. It was beyond the aft limits of centre of gravity. It accepted a clearance with a tailwind, an 8-knot tailwind. That effectively put it at something like 6.5 to 7 tons over the weight it should have been at. It embarked on this takeoff with the captain, I assume, well aware of the fact that his C of G was beyond the aft limits. So the transfer valve and the booster pumps were on, transferring fuel along the length of the airplane from tank 11 in the tail cone up into the wing tanks. So fuel was being pumped up the length of the airplane throughout that takeoff run, effectively filling up those already full tanks and keeping them full. That was completely contrary to correct procedures. That fuel transfer business is not supposed to take place during the takeoff at all. That's supposed, the shut-off valve's supposed to be shut and the booster pumps off. So, you know, you look at all these things, and depressingly, really depressingly, nobody on that flight deck is questioning that captain. The co-pilot never puts his hand up and says, "Hey, hang on a minute, skipper. We've got a tailwind. I think we've got to recalculate our speeds," and all the rest of it. No question of sort of saying, well, why not go down to the other end of the runway and take off in the opposite direction? I mean, it really was a crash that never should have happened. It's deeply depressing. And in the accident report, they blame two things. They blame a piece of metal on the runway, which was indeed one of the errors in the error chain, but only one of a whole series of errors in the error chain, and on design weaknesses in the aeroplane. There's nothing to do with design weaknesses in the aeroplane. To me, Concorde was about the safest aeroplane I've ever flown, because it was built like a proverbial brick lavatory. I mean, I'm serious now. I mean, it looks beautiful and elegant. It was as tough as old boots. I mean, the manufacturers had memories of the Comet blowing up, 3 Comet airliners that blew up through explosive decompressions, and they were quite neurotic about the same sort of thing happening with the Concorde. So it was really over-engineered. Very, very strong aeroplane. I don't know. I shall respond to this article in due course when I get around to it. But how on earth it can be said that the flight crew are blameless is completely beyond my comprehension. Yeah. I'm sorry, they were to blame. And you know, I've spoken at length to 2 Air France Concorde pilots who would both totally endorse my views about this without any question.
I think you're best placed to give an accurate opinion on that. How would you best describe BA's decision to ground Concorde after all the modifications following the Air France crash had been done?
Well, I think British Airways basically had no choice. Air France did not want to go on flying it. They never wanted to go on flying it after that crash. I don't know, you probably, I didn't even know if it's in the book, but that Concorde that day came within 20 feet of hitting a 747 that was parked by the left-hand side of the runway on a taxiway.
Yes, you mentioned that.
And that airplane had on board President Chirac and his wife. They'd come in from a state visit to Tokyo, to Japan, and flown in from Tokyo. So that day, Air France came within 20 feet of one of their Concordes, hitting one of their 747s with the President of France on board. It doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
No, it does not. But having said that, BA had still a very successful operation with the aircraft.
Yep. Yes.
And they spent all that money modifying it.
Yeah, but the trouble is that Air France didn't want to go on with it. And in 2003, with that Iraq War II happening and passenger loads decreasing, and suddenly Air France finding itself flying with half a dozen Concorde passengers, they were hemorrhaging, and they never wanted to go on with it anyway. They would have been very happy to have grounded it immediately after that crash and never to have it flying ever again. And it was only because they were locked into this agreement with British Airways that all these modifications, which were fine, you know, I've got no problems with the modifications that were done, but to try and sort of suggest that that was a solution to prevent such a crash ever happening again was absolute nonsense. So when, as I say, the Iraq War II happened, they went along to see Airbus and just said, look, we can't go on like this. What are we going to do? And Airbus just simply said, we'll hike up the product support costs of the aeroplane to a level British Airways can't afford. Now, I suppose British Airways could have challenged Airbus's decision in court, But the fact of the matter was, it was quite clear that Air France did not want to go on operating the aeroplane, and we're not going to go on operating the aeroplane. And British Airways would find it very difficult to do so on their own. So basically, I think British Airways were left with no choice but to endorse the decision to ground the aeroplane, which I think was tragic. Yeah. It should have been allowed to retire honourably and gracefully, not sort of press-ganged into retirement.
So having retired and left your fast, sleek, droopy-nosed mistress behind, I'm glad that you found plenty to do, but a bit concerned at the number of life-threatening accidents you seem to have had. Do you have an explanation?
I've tried many times to dispose of myself and failed on each attempt. So there we are. Fate has obviously singled me out as somebody who's singled out to survive.
That's very good. Now, I've visited Concorde at the Intrepid Museum in New York.
Yep.
I would describe it as little more than an awning for the cafe. Who do you think's done the best job of displaying the retired Concordes?
That's a very good question. I would have said Barbados. But sadly, the Barbados one's closed at the moment, and they just haven't got the funding. Oh. So they've got this wonderful hurricane-proof hangar that it lives in, right alongside the airport, and it's all closed up, which is a tragedy because those team of people in Barbados who were looking after it were so proud of it, and it was, of all the Concordes, that was probably the best kept and best looked after.
Wow.
It was very, very well presented. Having said that, Barbados is closed. The one at Bristol, at Filton, that's at whatever they call it, Bristol Aerospace Museum or whatever its official title is, that is very well presented. I've been to see that. The one in Manchester is very well presented.
I've been up there too, yes.
I haven't been to the one in Edinburgh. There's one up there. I must go up there sometime and have a look at that. Probably the best museum for the sort of overall Concorde experience is probably Brooklands. Because they've got there a Concorde that never actually flew with British Airways. It was the pre-production model, which was cut up and taken by road to Brooklands and then rebuilt by people at Surrey University.
Wow.
As part of their sort of university course.
That's a great idea.
And there it stands in Brooklands with all its seats and things in it, and sort of projections of what a typical supersonic flight looked like. And
excellent.
It's very well done. And furthermore, and for anybody who watches this, please go to Brooklands and go and fly the simulator. Because that's the simulator that I used to fly in my training at Filton. The simulator was removed from Filton, taken to Brooklands, and the idea was going to be that it would just be there as an object that people could sort of walk on to and look at the simulator. This is where they did their training. Not a bit of it. A team of geeks from British Airways, from the electronic sort of side of things, and other hydraulics and all the rest of it, got together, and they got that simulator working. They fitted to it a better visual system than I ever had when I was flying it.
I love it.
It was it's a wonderful visual system, and you can buy yourself a sort of half-hour Concorde flying experience and go flying under the Brooklyn Bridge or whatever else you want to do.
Supersonic?
So you're probably not quite supersonic, I think. I don't think our flight envelope allowed for that.
Excellent.
But it's really good fun. It's a wonderful museum and well worth visiting.
Well,
also, there's a Concorde on display in Seattle at the Museum of Flight in Seattle. And I'm very proud of the one there because it attracts more people going on board than the presidential 747 sitting next door to it.
That's the museum at Boeing Field, is it?
Yeah.
Lovely to have a Concorde in the heart of Boeing.
It's lovely to have a Concorde in the heart of Boeing. Exactly. Exactly.
Now, looking back on your long and illustrious career, John, what do you tend to think of as your greatest achievement?
Oh gosh, I think it has to be having the luck to be in the right place at the right time to get on to Concorde. I mean, Concorde has meant so much to me and has been so much an integral part of my life. I mean, I'm married to Sue, but I was also married to Concorde.
Your droopy-nosed mistress.
She was a very beautiful droopy-nosed mistress.
I love it.
Needle-nosed mistress as well.
Oh, right, okay.
Might have a droopy nose, but it was a pretty sharp, pointed nose.
I have to say, Nev, you must, obviously Nick was a big part as well, but you must be incredibly proud of the whole series so far, because honestly, I've seen all the episodes and stuff, and that was probably one of my favourites, I will admit, out so far. But they've all been fantastic. You must be so bloody proud of yourself, Nev, for putting all that together.
Well, yeah, it's great when you've got the content to work with and such a fantastic story. And of course, John's told this Concorde accident story in France many times before. He does lectures on it on cruise ships and all sorts of things, but I think Nick managed to get a slightly different perspective on the way John thought about these things. And John's often criticized for being too emotionally connected to the aircraft, but I think it's quite reasonable if you see or you believe that an operating crew has taken the thing off over the maximum structural weight with a tailwind of the sort that they had, 7 tons overweight. I mean, these are things you wouldn't do in a Cessna 152, let alone in a 4-engine passenger transport aircraft. So you can well see why he's got the views he has, and they're not always well received, I have to say. Certainly by some people in the manufacturing side of things, and some people in Air France maybe too. But nonetheless, he tells a great story with, I believe, a great deal of authority, and he's a fascinating character to listen to.
Isn't he? Yeah, he's absolutely fascinating. I'll tell you what, we were just saying before that came to an end. I didn't realise that there was a fully functioning Concorde simulator up and running. I would love to go and visit that with him. I would love to hear some of the stories that would come out of that. We'll have to perhaps see if they'd be open to something like that, because I think that'd be a fascinating experiment.
Well, certainly some previous Concorde crews have flown the simulator at Brooklands, and there's a couple of YouTube videos online that actually show that as well. Certainly Mike Bannister, the chief pilot of Concorde, the Concorde fleet, and the flight engineer and first officer certainly flew it, but yeah, it's a great experience. And as John says, it's nothing like that they had at Filton. The graphic system that's been designed and everything to do with it is so much better. So but it's a great experience. To say, Sue, Mrs. Nev, bought me a Concorde trip a couple of years ago for my birthday down there on the simulator, so I'd actually had to go on it as well, and it was brilliant. And they do the nice thing is you are with 2 Concorde pilots as well, or at least one, in the right hand seat. So it's it's really good.
Perhaps we need to buzz the people down there and just have a little visit down there. And
yeah, I'll leave that in your very charming hands.
Yeah. And if you want to, we'll put the link to this in the show notes. But if you want to go to brooklandsmuseum.com/Concorde, you will see the events that they have down there in Weybridge, and also how you can go about booking yourself or your loved one a flight.
Fantastic. Love it.
So, moving on from that awesome part of the show, we're going to move on next to, the next part of the show, which is, of course, the military segment. So, shall we hand things over to Armando?
Yeah, here we go.
Jonathan Warner in a small segment of the PTUK population. Happy, and we'll knock out a few military stories. This first story is from aviationnews.eu, and it is regarding the persistent high-altitude solar aircraft. We're just going to call that the FASA. So FASA 35 has the potential to stay airborne for up to 1 year. The FASA has a 35-meter wingspan. It is a solar electric aircraft. It has successfully completed its maiden flight. The landmark flight paves the way for this new aircraft to become a game changer in the air and space market, plugging the gap between aircraft and satellite technology. FASA 35 has been designed, built, and now flown in less than 2 years as part of a collaboration between Prismatic and a couple other companies designed to operate in the stratosphere above the weather and conventional air traffic. FASA 35 offers a persistent and affordable alternative to satellites, combined with the flexibility of an aircraft, which could be used for a range of valuable applications, including forest fire detection, maritime surveillance, and of course, military applications. Sponsored by the UK's Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, DSTL, and the Australian Defence Science and Technology Group, the successful flight trials, which took place at the Royal Australian Air Force Woomera Test Range in South Australia. The trials marked the first fully integrated flight test of the FASA 35 program, delivering rapid proof of capability from design to flight in just 20 months. They are the culmination of effects from a collaborative team of British experts from Prismatic in Hampshire, where two full-size concept aircraft were built last year, working alongside engineers in Lancashire, where the aircraft underwent further integration testing prior to flight trials. So the reason I put the story in there is this is incredibly important for military applications. As we saw last month with the military Gulfstream crash, that aircraft, its whole purpose was to provide an airborne networking node, almost a repeater for information, whatever, whether that be communications, data, anything like that. So we have made just leaps and bounds improvements and technology advances in the unmanned arena with the MQ-9, with the Global Hawk, at least in the military world. So having an airplane that can stay airborne for up to a year using solar power is incredibly beneficial. It's probably rapidly deployable, much more affordably deployable than a satellite system. And you could probably deploy this to some pretty austere environments, providing that information superiority that the military relies upon to conduct its operations. So this is, there's been projects for years and years and years and years about long endurance aircraft. I remember Aurora back in the day. I remember seeing that aircraft at the Manassas airport. But this maiden flight of this solar-powered aircraft could, I hate to use the word, could actually revolutionize the way airborne data management is handled. So I am looking forward to seeing how this program proceeds, and we'll see what other technology it spurs in the future.
Is it just me, or I mean that is blowing my mind?
Staying airborne for a year,
1 whole year.
You know, we talk about the longest passenger flight. What was it? 20 hours, wasn't it? I think it was. Like a passenger commercial airline flight. Imagine a commercial airline flight of a year.
I mean, if I was in first class, I could probably handle it if I'm honest, but it's just...
Fancy staying aloft for a year, Nev?
Well, yeah, my only concern would be toilet management.
Right.
You know how they empty the toilets at the end of flights. Well, I can see a problem there straight away.
Haven't you heard of blue ice?
Right. there's a terrifying thought for everyone, isn't it? Yes.
No, it is. I can see what Armando's saying, though. For the military application, it would be very cost effective, I think, to have something to be able to fly for.
I just love the fact that this is even it's so close to actually being a thing. I mean, I just find it mind blowing. I really do.
So the next story, this one for me is giving me reason to move to Hawaii. Soon, I think. So this one's on the airforcetimes.com, and for anyone who loves their vintage World War II fighter aircraft, you'll love this. The headline: Vintage World War II fighter plane to fly sightseers over Hawaii. So sightseers will soon have the opportunity to experience history while viewing Hawaii when a vintage World War II fighter aircraft begins passenger flights. A private company has modified a P-51 Mustang to allow space for the pilot and a backseat passenger beginning in March this year. The Honolulu Star Advertiser reported this story on Monday, and the Wings Over Pearl is expected to take passengers up in a 1944 Mustang owned by the Erickson Aircraft Collection, which participates in global air shows and operates paid flights from its hangar at Madras Airport in Oregon. A 15-minute tour of Pearl Harbor, Wheeler Army Airfield and the Hawaii fighter strip is expected to cost, here we go, grab your wallets and your credit cards, $2,900. That's not that bad, really. It's on par with what we charge in the UK here for a flight in a Spitfire. Anyway, a 30-minute ride that includes flights around Pearl Harbor, Wheeler, Hawaii, Bellows Airfield, Kahuku Army Airfield, and the former Naval Air Station Barbers Point is scheduled and will cost $3,400. The P-51 was regarded as one of the best fighter planes of the European theatre in the later part of World War II. First designed for the British as a medium-altitude fighter, the aircraft combined US design and Britain's Rolls-Royce V12 Merlin engine and flew as a bomber escort. The Mustang experienced in head-chopping, strafing runs and long-range escort duty, according to the aircraft company Boeing. It made its name for itself blasting trains, ships and enemy installations in Western Europe and by devastating Axis defences before the Allied invasion of Italy, Boeing said. By the end of the war, the Mustang had destroyed 4,950 enemy aircraft in the air, more than any other US Army Air Force fighter in Europe, the Air Force reported. It goes as saying here that there's nothing really like it, and it's such a distinctive sound. I can definitely say that, said P.J. O'Reilly, who helped the venture get off the ground. People are going to hear it and run outside to see it, as I'm sure they will do. But I think this is a great idea. Obviously, it's not cheap.
No,
but then I think there's definitely going to be a market for this.
Well, and you think, I mean, you know, in the UK, I mean, there's the massive love of the Spitfire, isn't there? And people are paying, you know, big sums of money to have an experience. I mean, and although, I mean, if I had the money, I would love to go in a Spitfire and give it a go.
Oh yeah,
do you know what I mean?
It's the price of a good second-hand used car.
Right. Okay.
Nev. P-51 or Spitfire? What would you rather pay your $2.5-3 grand for?
Spitfire, I think, for me.
Yeah.
It's somebody described the Spitfire. If it looks nice, it probably flies nicely as well. So
that is true.
That
is. But you got to admit that the noise that the P-51 makes on a dive.
Oh yeah, no, there's no argument there from me.
Good.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there we are.
Just reading for the chat room here. They're having a good old conversation in the chat room at the moment.
Oh, are they?
Underwater chaps in the chat room at the moment.
Underwater Richard.
Yes.
Yes.
So moving on to the next story, Nev, and interesting news for C-130 lovers.
Yeah, it's on the airforcetimes.com, and it says that an Air National Guard base in Nevada has proposed replacing its 25-year-old fleet of big turboprop planes that can carry troops or cargo with newer aircraft that are better for their firefighting capabilities. The Nevada Air National Guard base in Reno has proposed replacing its 8 C-130H aircraft with the newer C-130 C-130J model. They've got a lot of hours on them, and we have a difficult time coming up with maintenance parts at times in the supply chain, says the 152nd Airlift Wing Commander, Colonel Jacob Hammonds. Multiple senators have sent a letter to Air Force Secretary Barbara Barrett requesting the planes to help firefighting efforts throughout the western US. The newer aircraft models provide crews with better performance and safety, Hammonds says. You're low to the ground and you're at heavy weight and you're at slow airspeeds, all in a constrained environment where there is fire present, he says. Fighting fires is one of the most dangerous things that we do with these aircraft and with our air crews. For me, as a commander, it's all about increasing that safety margin. Congress approved funding for fleet replacements at 2 or 3 different air bases in its last spending bill, officials said. The Air Force expects to finalise which of the 13 air bases under construction will receive new aircraft. So that's some good news. And yes, those firefighting expeditions must be particularly challenging, I would imagine. So you want the best hardware you can.
Yeah, these C-130s have been about some time, but they have got a very good history, I should say, of being quite a robust aircraft. And just literally yesterday afternoon, we had an event here in the UK, not far from us, where they had a flyover of.
Did they?
They had a V-22 Osprey, which one of our hosts knows and loves, and they also had a C-130J in formation with that V-22 Osprey fly over the east of England coast. To celebrate, obviously, this plane that crashed, this B-17, I think it was, that crashed here in the UK during the war, and obviously they kind of commemorate the pilots that lost their lives in this particular thing. But no, they had one of these C-130Js, and it flew over our where I work, because we work at, or my base is on an old Royal Air Force base, RAF Horham, and he flew literally low level, and I mean low level. It was the noise from the aircraft was fairly loud, but it was lovely. Seeing these C-130s fly over is something else, and obviously seeing the V-22 as well is good. But no, it's good that they're obviously continuing on with the progression and moving up the letters in the alphabet to get a newer C-130. But actually, I was lucky enough, before Armando went back to the US, I got a tour around one of these, which was really good. Yeah, which is fantastic.
They, as you say, I mean, they're I mean, I've always said, that aeroplanes are created by engineers, helicopters.
And these are grey ones.
Yeah, well, yes, it's true. Helicopters made by guys at Hogwarts. The Osprey, I literally don't know where that thing's, because it's neither an aeroplane nor a helicopter. I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it?
Honestly, to have the opportunity, as we did, to go on board and look around the Osprey, it's just one heck of an aircraft to
It is
sit up close and personal.
Stunning bit of kit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that is where we have to start bringing the show to a close. We are done and dusted, gentlemen.
Ooh.
Well done, everyone. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can do that by several means. Search us on social media. That's things like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And our hashtag, or our tag, if you like, on there is Plain Talking UK, all as one word. Just search for Plain Talking UK. Our WhatsApp number, +44 757 22 49166. I assume it hasn't gone off during the show today.
No. Actually, I've just got a quick mention, actually. Because we did get, we have had a few messages come in.
Have you?
Yeah. From Airstig.
Oh, yes.
Airstig's quite a big user of the P2UK WhatsApp number. So hello to you, Airstig. We've also had a nice message as well. Big thanks to Alex Robinson. Sent me a very nice message through there as well about my grandfather. So thanks for that, Alex. Appreciate that very much indeed. So if you want to send us a message through the WhatsApp P2K WhatsApp number, please do. Yeah. And just think, if you send us a picture, Matt will put it.
I'll put it on the green screen.
Behind us there.
Yeah. That number again, +44 if you're outside of the UK, or if you're in the UK, it's just 0 757 2249166. That's +44 757 2249166. Email address podcast@planetalkinguk.com. Website www.planetalkinguk.com. You can buy some amazing t-shirts on there, or you can use the contact form and get in touch with us via there. Why not subscribe to our YouTube channel? You'll get notifications when we go live, and you can help shape the conversation of the show by joining us in our wonderful chat room. Go to www.youtube.com and search for Plane Talking UK. On our website, we do have an Amazon link. If you do your shopping, basically by clicking on that link from our website, then do your Amazon shopping as you do in the normal way, we actually get like an advertiser's referral fee, and so you can contribute to the show without actually having to physically put your hand in the pocket, and any money that we get from that we can then use in the form of Amazon vouchers to buy leads and cables and things like that. Or let's not forget Patreon, which is a wonderful service, and we are very lucky that we have some amazing people who use that on a regular basis. Search Patreon, so it's Patreon, patreon.com, sorry, I did get it right. Patreon.com, and then search for Plane Talking UK, and then you can donate to the show via there. PayPal also, again, look at the links on our website in order to do that. I think that's the housekeeping all done.
I know. Yeah. I just think if you could see in the studio here where me and Matt are, where all these various cables and leads and stuff are all, and cameras and bits and pieces. Yeah. Just think that this is all
been paid for
by our lovely Patreon people and
PayPal
stuff.
donators.
PayPal
Absolutely.
donators. So,
Nev's studio behind him, however, no Patreon budget could ever cope with demands of that nature.
I've probably gone a bit over the top.
Do you think?
Absolutely. Too many tellies already, isn't there?
Just out of interest, is that the latest Denzel Washington film you're editing behind you? Is it?
Yes, he's there, isn't he?
He's still working
in the corner there. That's right. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. We'll pass that to our producer, who I dare say who can doctor that and put something else.
I'm sure. I'm worried that he might want an appearance fee.
Good. There is that.
Well, Nev, could you just bring that fader down behind you again? That's sorry.
Bit peaky, mate. Sorry. Yeah, bit peaky. There we go. Lovely. Excellent.
Thank you.
Job well done. And the last thing it says in the show notes here is have a wonderful show.
Oh, really?
So
what are you doing this week, anyway, Matt?
I don't know.
Before we go,
I'm back to driving this week.
Is it this week you're back to driving?
Yeah. No, they're only off for a week this week. The kids. Basically it's been half term this week.
So Matt's been doing nothing.
So no, nothing. I wish. Blooming it. Look, genuinely, if you look at my hat, like they're absolutely ruined by all the cleaning that we've been doing this week. All the vehicles have had a you'd be very proud of me. I was tea cutting and polishing and goodness knows what else. Poor Ken, bless him.
Hello, Ken.
I know, but poor Ken, bless him. He's been polishing one of our vehicles is going for MOT, and we like to sort of company polish, if you like. That's one of the great things about Lorraine, is when that vehicle is presented for MOT, that thing is like it was just left the factory. The only downside to that is there's lots of compounding and tea cutting and polishing and God knows what else. So it's just like, it's amazing. But I'll be glad to be back behind the wheel doing a bit of driving this week, I think. Really. We had fun on Tuesday though, didn't we, Nev?
Oh yes, we went all the way to Ipswich.
Yes, absolutely. You were there for work, I should stress. You didn't voluntarily go to Ipswich.
Yeah. We had a good chat, and
we did.
Yeah, it was a very, very nice evening as well, and that was brilliant. Next week, I am back in a similar area because I'm off to Cambridge on Monday night to do some filming with those very nice fellows at the A320 podcast.
Yes.
So I'm doing that on Tuesday at the simulator at Cambridge Airport. So if anyone is around the Holiday Inn Express in Cambridge on Monday night and fancies a beer or two, then please drop me a note. But I do realise that might be a bit of a long slog for some people. But if you happen to be in the East Anglia area and you fancy meeting up, I will be around on Monday night in Cambridge.
There we are. There we go. That's we'll perhaps have a chat after the show, Nev. You never know. I might come and visit you in Cambridge.
Please do.
Absolutely. Yes. Right. So, Carlos, what are you up to this week? Where are you going? Anywhere exotic?
Well, on Monday, as Nev's heading this way, I'll be heading Nev's way.
Oh, dear.
So I'll be waving at him on the
as you pass each other on the A14 or something.
I'm heading to the lovely place that is Banbury on Monday. And then on Wednesday, just for a laugh, I'm going to go to London.
Are you? Oh, it's fun there. You'll enjoy
in
that.
a lorry.
Yeah. Oh, you'll really enjoy that. Yeah,
which
absolutely.
will be fun. I'm really looking forward to that. So, Stuart, if you're watching the show, because I know you do, I might get one of the other drivers to do that run. Anyway,
that's outrageous.
And apart from that,
about throwing his weight around.
I know. Well, that is my job title, manager. Manager.
Right. Yes, but I'm always a believer that any manager should lead by example.
Oh, I do. I washed. Do you know what? Let me just say this. Matt's been cleaning his coaches today. I cleaned not one vehicle, not two vehicles, but 3 vehicles today whilst I was at work.
Wow. Slow day, was it?
Well, it's been a bit of a busy day.
Yeah.
But no, I'm looking forward to next week and the following week. I'm off. I'm actually got a week off, so I'm going to be doing some nothing at home.
Lovely, I say.
But next week,
what's happening? I'm not here.
Matt's not here next week.
No, I'm going to Glasgow.
Glasgow?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh,
yeah, I'm
very
off to
nice.
Glasgow. So if
bit of plane spotting?
Yeah, probably. I'll probably get made to do that. So if anybody is in sort of the Glasgow central area, do feel free to ping me an email, matt@planetalkinguk.com. That's that's 2 T's, I should stress. matt@planetalkinguk.com.
That's a lot of
do feel free to, if you're in the Glasgow area, Glasgow central, then do let me know. That's it. That's where we have to bring the show to a close.
So we're going to say a massive thanks to everyone in the chat room, as always, tonight for joining us.
It's been a really busy chat room.
Really good chat room tonight. They've been having a damn good conversation between each other in there.
Absolutely.
So big thanks to that.
Much better doing that than listening to us.
So from me, Carlos, and Matt here in the P2UK studios, and from Nev at Nev Tech Studios, have a great weekend. Enjoy your Sunday roasts, and goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. See you later.